Is my beer bad? Is my beer infected? Is it contaminated? Is it poison? Should I dump my beer? Questions like these are fairly common on Reddit's r/homebrewing, and they're generally asked by folks who are making beer for the first time. But we recently found ourselves wondering the same thing after opening up a warm keg and discovering this. Here's a sample in a glass that's been sitting out for a few days. Gross, huh? Well, what do you think? Is it bad? Should we drink it? I think we might. Beer is made by mashing malted cereal grain and creating wort, which is basically sugar water. It's boiled and hops are added. Then it's cooled and yeast is added to turn the hoppy sugar water into alcohol. And it's primarily the yeast that catches people off guard. What looks like a tiny bit of yeast is added to cooled wort to kick off fermentation, but looks can be deceiving. A single package of liquid yeast contains more than 100 billion individual yeast cells, and when it gets added to wort, the little yeast cells start feasting on the sugar, they start growing, and they begin to reproduce very rapidly. The abundance of sugar and the growth rate causes a massive amount of yeast to be produced relative to the starting pitch, and what is called a krausen begins to form on top of the wort, which is at first a thick, gooey, sticky layer of yeast that begins then to froth and foam during high krausen. It's visually dramatic, to say the least. It certainly doesn't look like something you'd want to eat or drink, and it catches most new brewers off guard. After fermentation is finished, there's still sometimes a bit of sediment floating on top of the liquid. There's always yeast stuck to the side of the fermenter, and most of the stuff that was once on top of the liquid sinks to the bottom of the fermenter, creating a layer of sludge that can be several inches thick. So the nature of what beer normally looks like can trick a lot of new brewers into thinking that what they made is bad, when in reality, that's just what it looks like. There are times when the process goes south and brewers end up with something that isn't what they expected. A range of bacteria and wild yeasts can and will grow alongside the yeast if given the chance. That's why it's critically important to clean and sanitize all brewing equipment before making beer. It's also important to boil ingredients before fermentation, which will kill any bad bugs and prevent things from going south during the fermentation process. What has happened here is an instance of the latter, because this isn't what beer normally looks like. Before brewing, I thoroughly cleaned everything and I sanitized everything that the beer would be touching after the boil, just like I always do. However, I made one critical error. I didn't follow the brew day instructions that I wrote down for myself. I made a thiol boosted IPA with this phantasm powder quite a while back. The directions clearly state that you should add this to the whirlpool, which I take to mean like 170 degrees. If I remember correctly, I didn't add it until I had cooled down like way past that, meaning that if there's any sort of like natural bacteria on here, it was gonna do something to the beer. Now, I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened, but that's really the only difference between this beer and any other beer I've, made recently, and this is the only beer that's gotten funky like this. So we need to siphon this liquid out here, and it's not gonna be easy because there's not a ton of liquid in there, and I don't wanna use a good siphon for this, because whatever that touches, it could contaminate it for life. Brettanomyces is not easy to get rid of once you have it. I'm confident I can get out of the stainless steel, but if I get it in a siphon with a bunch of little parts and pieces, that's another story. So I'm gonna try and siphon with this hose. Ooh. It looks really nice. I like the color, and my impression as I was drinking it, as I was siphoning this, is that it is on point for like a nasty, funky Brett beer. It's not sour at all, but it is like funk to the max. The flavor descriptor for Brettanomyces is, I kid you not, sweaty horse blanket. And I've never tasted a sweaty horse blanket. I think I've only even ridden a horse once. But if I had to imagine what it would taste like, this is it. It's just got like this barnyard funk that is immediately recognizable and undeniable. So I'm gonna chill it down and carbonate it and see what that does to it. The white, bubbly, dusty looking film on top of the liquid in this glass and in our keg is called a pellicle, and it's formed by lactobacillus, pediococcus, or Brettanomyces, bacteria and wild yeast. So back to the original question, should I dump this beer or should we drink it? Well, these types of bacteria and yeast are sometimes added to beer to achieve certain characteristics. Lactobacillus and pediococcus produce lactic acid, which makes beer taste sour, a taste that a lot of people like. Brettanomyces, on the other hand, is a wild yeast that produces, well, wild flavors, I guess you could call them. Beer that's been brewed with Brett is often described as barnyardy. I added a massive amount of hops to this beer, and hops generally stunt the growth of lacto. Also, if it was pediococcus, I'm sure I would be able to smell the acidity, which I cannot. So we've most likely brewed a Brett IPA, and instead of being bummed, I'm actually pretty excited because I happen to love Brett IPAs. I hated Brett beers at first. It is definitely an acquired taste, but apparently I have acquired that taste. So we're going to drink this stuff and not dump it, but I wouldn't always suggest doing this. In general, pellicles are fine if you're into sour, funky beers, but if the beer had signs of mold, which looks very different, I would definitely be dumping it. That stuff can make you very sick. Or if it just smells or tastes like absolute garbage, yeah, I would dump it.
Kyle, what are we drinking?
We are drinking a Brett IPA that we accidentally brewed.
We?
Okay, I did. In the 5 years plus that we've been brewing and filming for our YouTube channel, and really in my entire life, this is only the second time I think we've accidentally made something that ended up with a pellicle on it. Yeah, that is quote infected. The first time was because we fermented a beer with an actual log. If you haven't seen the log video, you have to check that out. I think it's the coolest project we ever have done.
Yeah, that's sweet.
That log definitely had wild yeast on it, and
But that was the goal, right?
Yeah, that was the goal. We intentionally did that, but then we fermented our next batch of beer in that same bucket. It was Mexican lager, and in fact, there were 2 buckets, and we ended up with 10 gallons of like funky Mexican lager, and that Mexican lager was outstanding.
It was good.
Yeah. So anyway.
Clean your equipment.
Yeah.
Keep them separate.
Yeah, clean your equipment and keep your funky bugs separate. And if you're gonna add in some weird adjuncts, do it like above, 170.
Should we try it?
Yeah, let's try it.
Yeah, it's pretty.
Yeah.
Good color.
Yeah, I like it.
I'm not picking up a ton of funk by any means.
No, it's definitely there. I mean, I taste it, but I also saw the pellicle yesterday, and so, that's top of mind for me.
I think I'm getting most of it is just like a really drying sensation inside my mouth where it's just like bitter / dry. I can't tell the difference. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, you get a little bit of that wet blanket kind of hay field or whatever, but
hay is I was tasting more like coarse blanket yesterday. Today, more like hay, cold.
Yeah, warm. I don't know if I'd want to go near it.
No, it wasn't good really.
But I mean, either my standards are really low, but it's citrusy, a little bit of funky.
Yep.
I kind of dig it.
Yeah.
You know, as opposed to like your normal IPAs that, you know, you get all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I haven't had beer in about a week. That's a lie. I haven't had beer in like 4 days.
Say, you didn't turn your lights on in your office all day yesterday.
I kind of like it.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I'll see you guys later.
All right, we'll see everybody later because I'm leaving too. Thanks for watching. Bye.